watched my husband accept a ring from another woman in front of 300 guests, while she declared to the world that I was nothing but a useless wife standing in the way of his future. Subscribe for more stories of revenge and justice. The night should have been mine as much as his. The Horizon Biotech Gala was always the pinnacle of our year, a celebration of breakthroughs and partnerships, hosted this time in Seattle's tallest glass tower overlooking the harbor. My midnight blue gown shimmered under the soft glow of our penthouse lights as I adjusted the straps, believing I was about to stand proudly beside Adrian, my husband of 7 years. Instead, I was stepping into the theater of my own betrayal. His phone buzzed on the dresser, flashing with another stream of notifications. Normally I ignored his work chatter, it was endless. But this time, a preview line froze me in place. Asterisk, she won't see it coming. After the proposal, her breakdown will justify the restructuring. Asterisk, signed by Evelyn North, CEO of Horizon, Adrian's boss, and the woman whose reputation for ruthlessness echoed through the industry. My hand trembled as I picked up the phone. Threads of messages unfolded like a script for my humiliation. Evelyn had been planning for weeks, even choreographing when Adrian would accept her ring. They called it the performance. And I was meant to play the fool who crumbled under pressure. The Cartier pen I had chosen as Adrian's anniversary gift sat in its velvet box on the vanity. He had once admired that model, saying he wanted to sign his legacy with it. The irony cut deep. I had searched antique shops across the country to find it, while he had been rehearsing lines for tonight's spectacle with another woman. "Lena, my cufflinks," Adrian called from the marble bathroom, his tone light, careless, like the world was perfectly aligned. I placed the gold Horizon cufflinks in his hand. He kissed my cheek without looking into my eyes. He never saw that I already knew. Our penthouse glittered with the trappings of success. Leather imported from Milan. Original art worth more than a house. All of it bought with Horizon's revenue, built from algorithms I had designed during endless nights when the city slept. Behind one bookshelf, hidden in a coded safe, lay the true record of ownership, 65% to me, 35% to him. Horizon Biotech was not his kingdom. It was mine, funded by the inheritance my late father left with a note in his careful engineer's hand, asterisk, build something honest. Do not let anyone erase your name. Asterisk. I had already betrayed his words once, letting Adrian play the visionary while I played the supporting spouse. Tonight would be different. The limousine ride through Pike Street was drowned in his chatter about investor expansion. He never noticed the way I clenched the Cartier box in my lap until my nails left half-moon marks on the velvet. Each vibration of his phone reminded me, I was the target of my husband's greatest collaboration, one not of science, but of betrayal. The ballroom doors opened with a swell of chandeliers, crystal, and polished marble. 300 of Seattle's most powerful investors mingled with champagne flutes in hand. I stood beside Adrian, smiling for photographs, while he searched the room with restless eyes. Then I saw her, Evelyn North. Draped in scarlet silk, every step calculated, every smile sharpened into a weapon. Her presence drained the air from the room. Dinner passed like fog. I hardly tasted the food. Adrian's phone buzzed again and again, each time silenced with a quick flick. His hand stayed near mine, but his gaze never settled. My heart pounded in my ears as dessert plates were cleared. The master of ceremonies introduced Evelyn to the stage. Her speech began innocuously enough, partnerships, growth, vision. The usual. But then her words shifted. Sometimes partnerships evolve into something greater, she said, her eyes scanning the hall until they landed on me. My stomach twisted. She stepped down from the podium, reached into her clutch, and dropped to one knee before my husband. The room gasped. Phones rose into the air like an army of swords, capturing every second. Adrian Cole, Evelyn said with a voice sharp enough to cut glass. Leave behind the barren wife who has only held you back. Choose me, and together we will build the future. The cruelty of her words stabbed deeper than the diamond ring she held out. My knees buckled, but I stood tall. All eyes were on Adrian. He smiled. And without hesitation, he said yes. The hall erupted into applause, laughter, and flashing cameras. It was theater, and I was the sacrifice. They expected me to scream, to collapse, to provide their spectacle. But I did something none of them anticipated. I remained silent. Silent and steady. Because they did not know that Horizon Biotech was already mine. And before the night was over, I would remind them all. The applause from the ballroom still thundered in my ears long after I left the glass tower. Outside, the damp Seattle air clung to my skin like a second dress, the scent of saltwater rising from the harbor. Guests were still inside, laughing, drinking, congratulating Adrian and Evelyn on their new beginning. But the real beginning was mine. The night they thought would erase me was the night I decided to carve my name in stone. The limousine driver asked if I wanted to be taken home. I nodded without a word. My silence unnerved him. He kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror as if I might break. But I did not break. I held the Cartier pen box tightly, the velvet imprinted with my grip. It was no longer a gift. It was evidence. A symbol of how far I had been willing to go for love, and how little he deserved it. Our penthouse greeted me with its sterile perfection, marble countertops, glass walls, art positioned for magazine covers rather than comfort. Once, I thought this was success. Now it looked like a stage set, lifeless without the lies that had animated it. I slipped off my heels and walked straight to the bookshelf, fingers brushing over the rows of leather-bound volumes until they found the hidden notch. With a click, the panel shifted open. The safe lay behind it, matte black steel against the pale wood. I keyed in the code, numbers etched into my memory from the day my father pressed the inheritance papers into my hands. The door swung open with a metallic sigh, and inside rested the truth. Folders stacked neatly, labeled in my handwriting. Incorporation papers bearing my signature as founder. Share distribution, 65% Lena Cole, 35% Adrian Cole. Patent filings for every algorithm that powered Horizon's billion-dollar valuation, each bearing my name as inventor. Bank ledgers showing the capital my father had provided, the same money Adrian had once dismissed as small change until it transformed Horizon from a dream into an empire. And the letter. My father's handwriting still clear, though the ink had faded with time. Asterisk, build something honest. Do not let anyone erase your name. Asterisk. I traced the lines of that sentence with trembling fingers. I had failed him once by letting Adrian take the stage while I stood in the shadows. Tonight proved the cost of that silence. Never again. I spread the documents across the dining table like weapons, each page a blade sharper than Evelyn North's tongue. Adrian and Evelyn thought public humiliation would strip me of power. But power did not live in applause or photographs. Power was in ink and signatures, in patents and ledgers, in ownership percentages that could not be rewritten by gossip. The Cartier pen glistened in its box. A cruel irony, I had intended it to mark Adrian's future. Now, it would mark his end. He would sign away everything he thought was his with that very pen. I sat in the stillness, the city lights shimmering through the floor-to-ceiling windows, and mapped the blueprint of my retaliation. First, freeze the accounts. Horizon's financial architecture was mine. I had designed it, coded it, secured it. Every safeguard was tied to my authorization. With a few keystrokes, I could choke the flow of money until every investor, every vendor, every employee understood who truly controlled their lifeline. Second, prepare the legal packet. A set of documents demanding his resignation, barring Evelyn and her firms from any involvement with Horizon, forcing repayment of every cent he had siphoned from company accounts for business retreats that were nothing more than vacations. Third, public acknowledgement. The record would be corrected. The world would learn the truth. And I would no longer be invisible in my own creation. I pulled my laptop closer and began drafting the terms with clinical precision. Each clause was surgical, designed not just to punish but to ensure he could never again exploit my work. My training as a corporate lawyer and my sleepless nights as a coder fused into one purpose: justice. I typed until my fingers ached, until my reflection in the glass windows blurred into the skyline. By the time I finished, a manila folder of legal steel lay ready on the table. It was not anger that guided me, it was mathematics. Truth expressed in percentages and clauses. 65 beats 35. Always. The clock struck 3 in the morning. My phone buzzed with 17 missed calls from Adrian, each one ignored. He would be returning soon, desperate to explain, desperate to twist the narrative. But explanations would not matter. He could spin stories for the press, for Evelyn, for the board, but not for me. I had the numbers. I had the signatures. I had the truth. As dawn crept across the sound, painting the sky in streaks of silver, I closed the safe again. But this time, the document stayed out, spread across the dining table like a battlefield map. When Adrian came home, he would not be walking into his sanctuary. He would be walking into his trial. And the verdict had already been written. The city was still sleeping when I opened my laptop again. The screen's glow painted my face in pale light, reflecting the storm that had been brewing for months. Outside, dawn stretched its first fingers over the sound, quiet and innocent. But inside our penthouse, I was preparing a blackout. I had built Horizon security protocols myself during those fragile early days when we feared cyber attacks from rivals. Every wireframe, every line of code bore my fingerprints. Adrian had never bothered to learn the system. Why would he? He had me. He thought access meant ownership. He never realized the system only obeyed its architect. The first keystroke was simple, a login with a string of passcodes only I knew. The dashboard opened, revealing the beating heart of Horizon's finances. Millions flowed through those channels every week: vendor invoices, payroll, investor deposits. I had designed it to withstand hackers and firewalls. Tonight, it would withstand my husband. I hovered over the authorization tab, my hand steady. Freeze account. One click, and the European investor tour Evelyn had orchestrated would dissolve into nothing. Another click, and Adrian's corporate credit cards, those little plastic tokens of power, would turn to dead weight in his wallet. Restaurants, hotels, private jet charters, declined in an instant. Their performance would lose its stage. The screen flickered as the first lock engaged. A list of transactions scrolled into error messages: authorization denied, payment declined, insufficient clearance. Each red alert felt like oxygen filling my lungs. For every lie Adrian had whispered, for every smirk Evelyn had flashed, I was cutting their lifeline. I moved to the payroll queue. Employees would be safe. Their accounts ran on a separate channel that I kept insulated from Adrian's misuse. But his personal, business development budget, $25 million over 3 years, was frozen. It would take him less than 12 hours to realize that his kingdom had no treasury. Let him explain that to Evelyn when the hotel cancels her champagne suite. The Cartier pen lay beside me, gleaming in the early light. It seemed to watch as I typed, a reminder of how close I had come to gifting him something precious. Instead, it would soon carve his surrender on paper. A fitting end. By mid-morning, the ripple effects were visible. My phone buzzed with frantic notifications: declined charges in London, a cancelled booking in Geneva, a luxury car rental voided in San Francisco. Each failure was another crack in the facade Adrian had built. Vendors began emailing me directly, confused by sudden reversals. Investors asked for clarity. Their questions piled into my inbox, but I answered none. Not yet. Timing was everything. Let him stew in silence until the panic spread wide enough to burn. At 10 o'clock, I activated the final stage, an operational freeze on Horizon's discretionary accounts. This time, even Evelyn's consulting fee bounced back into her firm's ledger. I imagined her manicured hand gripping the phone, barking at assistants, demanding to know what went wrong. And Adrian, standing helpless beside her, fumbling for explanations. For once, he had no script. Only failure. I leaned back in my chair, staring out at the city. Seattle's skyline was awakening, ferries moving across the water, commuters filling the streets. They had no idea that, on the 31st floor of a penthouse, a war had already begun. A war with no bullets, only balance sheets. No smoke, only silence. Yet the damage would be absolute. The safe behind me hummed softly, its door still open. The documents waited, patient and precise. Ownership percentages, patents, inheritance trails. My arsenal was ready. Tonight's gala had been their theater, but this was mine. And in my theater, the script always ended with me. My phone vibrated again, this time with Adrian's name lighting up the screen. Call after call. 23 missed in less than an hour. I watched it ring, listened to the sound echo through the room, and let it die each time. He would beg soon enough. He would try to twist words into apologies, into bargains. But numbers cannot be bargained with. Numbers never lie. A knock shattered the silence. Sharp, urgent, desperate. The doorman's voice crackled through the intercom. "Mrs. Cole, there's a man here, Adrian's assistant. He says it's an emergency." I closed the laptop, slid the Cartier pen into the folder of legal papers, and rose slowly. The war had already begun. Now the first messenger of their downfall had arrived at my door. The knock grew louder, urgent enough to rattle the brass handle. I pressed the intercom button and heard the doorman's nervous tone again. "Mrs. Cole, it's Mr. Vaughn, your husband's assistant. He says it's urgent. He looks distressed." Distressed. That word almost made me smile. I opened the door and found Marcus Vaughn standing there, the man Adrian had once called his right hand. His usual immaculate suit was rumpled, his tie loosened, his hair plastered from a sleepless night. He clutched a coffee cup in one hand, shaking so badly that half of it sloshed onto the marble floor. "Mrs. Cole," he stammered, eyes wide, "something's wrong, everything's wrong." He looked as if the ground beneath him had vanished. "Payments are bouncing. The investor tour is cancelled. Even the payroll system is flashing errors. I've never seen anything like this." I gestured toward the living room. He obeyed like a man walking into a courtroom, sinking into the edge of the Italian leather sofa as if it might swallow him whole. His eyes darted to the folders spread across the dining table, documents arranged like evidence. He did not yet understand, but he felt it. The atmosphere told him this was no accident. "Start from the beginning," I said, my voice calm, deliberate. Marcus rubbed his forehead with trembling fingers. Around midnight the corporate cards stopped working. At first we thought it was a bank glitch. But then hotel bookings vanished, gone, just wiped. By morning, the payroll authorization flagged errors. Even Evelyn's consulting fee reversed. She's furious, calling every half hour. Investors are demanding explanations. And Adrian, he faltered, glancing at me nervously. "Adrian says you're the only one who can fix it." I let the silence stretch, watching the weight of my calmness crush him more than anger ever could. "Fix it?" I repeated softly. Tell me, Marcus, what exactly am I supposed to fix? He swallowed hard. Adrian said you built the architecture. That maybe the protocols malfunctioned. That you'd know how to reset them. My laugh was low, cold, without humor. There are no malfunctions. The system is working exactly as I designed it. His face drained of color. The truth settled in like poison. He wasn't here to deliver bad news, he was here to carry a death sentence back to his master. I picked up the manila folder from the table and walked toward him. He flinched as I held it out, as though the papers inside were radioactive. Give this to Adrian, I said, every syllable sharp as glass. Tell him he has 24 hours to sign. Immediate resignation. Repayment of every personal expense. A permanent ban on Evelyn North and her firms. And a public statement correcting the record. Marcus stared at the folder, lips trembling. He'll never agree. He will, I said, sliding the Cartier pen onto the folder's surface. He will because this is the only pen he'll ever hold again with my name attached to it. The assistant's hands shook as he took the package, as though he understood he was carrying not paper but judgment. His gaze flickered toward the safe behind me, still cracked open, files glinting in the dim light. He knew now that Adrian had underestimated me. Perhaps he even pitted his employer. What should I tell the board? Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Tell them the truth, I said. That sometimes people mistake access for ownership. And when that happens, they discover the person who built the system always holds the final key. The weight of my words followed him as he staggered out, clutching the folder like contraband. The elevator doors closed with a hiss, sealing his fate as the reluctant messenger of Adrian's collapse. For a moment, the apartment was silent again. Then my phone lit up with a new call. Not Adrian. Not Evelyn. This time, it was a board member. The war was spilling wider, faster than even I had predicted. And I knew the next battle would not be fought in whispers at my door. It would be fought in the boardroom. He arrived close to midnight, the hour when excuses sound most sincere. The elevator chimed, and Adrian stepped into the apartment like a man surfacing from a storm with no shore in sight. His tuxedo, once immaculate, was creased and damp. His bow tie hung crooked. He smelled of cold air, panic, and a cologne he had begun wearing after Evelyn joined Horizon. Lena, he said softly, as if we were fragile glass and he feared the sound of his own voice. Please. Tonight was not what it looked like. I did not rise from the sofa. The dining table between us remained a courtroom, incorporation papers aligned like a verdict, patent folders stacked in strict order, the Cartier pen gleaming beside a single signature page. He followed my gaze to the documents and swallowed hard. She ambushed me, he tried again. The proposal was theater for investors. It was a test. Evelyn said if you fought for me, the board would rally behind us. She said. Stop. The word landed between us like a seal pressed into cooling wax. I read your messages. Color drained from his face. For a heartbeat he seemed to reach for some vanished horizon, then squared his shoulders with learned bravado. Messages can be taken out of context. We were gaming out scenarios. You know how it is before a funding round. Optics. Storytelling. I slid a ledger forward. Line items marched down the page in orderly columns. Is this optics, Adrian? 25 million in business development across 3 years. Private villas labeled as strategy retreats. Jet charters listed as investor diligence. Jewelry purchases coded as hospitality. His mouth opened and closed. Those were necessary. Relationships are expensive. Your father's money made it possible to move fast. My father's money built the first server racks and paid 3 engineers who mortgaged their futures on my code. It was not a tab for your performance art. He flinched. The word stung because it was precise. I turned another page. Patent certificates under glass. The algorithms that drove Horizon's valuation, written in my hand through nights when the city slept and he practiced keynote pauses in the mirror. You presented these as if you made them, I said. You accepted applause for solutions you cannot debug. His voice rose. I translated your genius for people who could fund it. I went out there because you refused to play the politics. I carried the vision. You carried the microphone, I replied. I carried the company. Silence expanded, heavy and intimate. He took a step closer, palms open in a plea. I was afraid, Lena. Afraid the board would push you aside because you hate the spotlight. Evelyn promised stability. She promised me a way to protect what we built. By erasing me, I said. He shook his head quickly, too quickly. No. By calming them. By letting me handle the noise so you could do the real work. We would have shared the outcome. We always have. I turned the incorporation papers toward him. Black ink on white paper, the geometry of power. 65 to me, 35 to you. We did not always share the outcome. I allowed you the face of it. That privilege ended tonight. He reached for the nearest justification like a drowning man reaching for a floating chair. Then use the video. Evelyn on her knee. Use it to force her out. We can fix this together. I picked up my phone and deleted the clip in front of him. His last strategy vanished with a soft tap. I do not need spectacle when the truth is signed. He stared at the blank screen, then at the pen. For the first time all night his eyes found mine and stayed. The performance drained away, leaving a tired man with nothing left but the shape of himself. What happens if I do not sign? I placed the manila folder on the table and spoke without heat. Litigation that will strip you faster than the market on a bad morning. Criminal referrals where appropriate. A permanent record that will outlast your career. Or you sign, resign, repay, acknowledge the truth, and walk out with the only thing you can salvage, a chance to become honest. His jaw trembled. He sank into a chair and set his hands on his knees like a schoolboy punished for a prank he could not charm his way out of. You are merciless. I am precise. The clock hummed. The city breathed beyond the windows. A fairy horn carried across the dark water and faded to a line of memory. He rubbed his temples. What happens to me after? You will learn the size of your name without mine. He exhaled through his teeth, a tired, human sound. And Evelyn. Banned from Horizon. Permanently. He nodded once, as if accepting a weather report. Then his gaze drifted across the battlefield of paper and landed on the letter in my father's hand. He read the simple line, the one that had carried me through the hours since the gala. Build something honest. Do not let anyone erase your name. When he looked up again, something defensive had dimmed in him. I loved you, he said. Not a defense, not even an argument. An admission. I do not know when loving you turned into using what you built to feel like I mattered. For a moment I felt the echo of old rooms, old laughter, old mornings when we had believed we were a single story with 2 narrators. The echo passed. Sign, I said. He took the pen. The Cartier metal cooled quickly under his fingers. He read the first page carefully, then the second, the third. His eyes slowed at the clauses that mattered: resignation effective immediately, structured repayment, comprehensive non-disclosure, public statement of authorship and ownership. His hand hovered over the signature line. The room held its breath. His phone lit beside him with a message preview that cut like a shard of ice. Evelyn North, do not sign. The board is moving. Check your email now, Adrian's eyes flicked from the screen to the pen, then back to me, caught between a past that had just ended and a future he could not yet see. The apartment filled with a low mechanical hum as my inbox began to bloom with alerts. The board had made its move. The pen tip touched paper. The pen trembled in his grip, its silver weight no longer a gift but a blade. One stroke of ink could cut away everything he believed was his. His phone buzzed again with Evelyn's name flashing across the screen, her words daring him to resist. Do not sign. The board will protect you, Adrian's jaw tightened. He looked at me, at the documents, then back at the glowing device. A man trapped between two worlds, one built on deception, the other on truth. His lips parted as if to protest, but the weight of silence pressed harder than any argument. Choose, I said, steady and cold. The paper in front of you or the screen in your hand. One holds consequences, the other holds delusions. He glanced at the first page again. Resignation, effective immediately. The second page. Repayment of misused funds, $25 million over structured installments. The third. Permanent prohibition of Evelyn North and her affiliates from Horizon Biotech. The fourth. A public statement acknowledging me as founder, architect, and majority owner. And the fifth, his gag order. No memoirs. No interviews. No speeches. No profiting from a story he had stolen. His fingers tightened around the pen until his knuckles whitened. You are asking me to erase myself, he whispered. No, I replied. I am asking you to acknowledge reality. The erasure happened when you let her kneel in front of you. The pen scratched paper. A single line of ink unfurled like blood from an open vein. One signature. Then another. Page after page fell under his hand, his initials trailing across margins with the rhythm of surrender. Each stroke stripped away the facade he had worn for years. Each line returned Horizon to its rightful architect. By the final page, sweat dotted his brow. He set the pen down and stared at his signature, the loops and slashes that once commanded applause now reduced to confession. His chest rose and fell, shallow and uneven. Do you feel powerful now? He asked, voice hoarse. Watching me fall apart. I leaned back, folding the documents into the manila folder. I do not feel powerful. I feel accurate. The clock ticked past 1 in the morning. Outside, the city hummed with distant traffic, oblivious to the trial that had just ended 31 floors above. Adrian slumped in the chair, eyes glassy, hands limp in his lap. The pen lay between us, gleaming like a sword returned to its sheath. I slid the folder into the safe, sealing the verdict with a metallic click. You will deliver your statement to the board tomorrow, I said. They will hear the truth in your own voice. After that, you are finished. He laughed bitterly, the sound hollow. And what about us? There is no us, I said. Only math. 65 and 35. Numbers do not care about vows. For a moment he looked at me as though seeing me for the first time, not as his wife, not as his silent partner, but as the architect who had built the walls closing in on him. Then he rose, unsteady, and staggered toward the door. He did not look back. The elevator swallowed him in silence. The apartment seemed to exhale once he was gone. I stood by the window, the city lights flickering like a constellation of choices. He had signed. But Evelyn was still out there, circling like a hawk, and the board would not let the matter end quietly. They had been complicit, blinded by charm, and now they would be forced into daylight. My phone buzzed again, this time with an email alert. Subject line, Emergency Board Meeting, 7 a.m. attendance required. I smiled faintly, the kind of smile forged in fire. The signatures were done. The man had sunk. Now it was time for the tribunal. The glass conference room on the 32nd floor of Horizon's headquarters gleamed under the pale light of early morning. Mahogany table polished to perfection, leather chairs arranged like thrones for 12 anxious kings. The skyline of Seattle stretched beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, indifferent to the storm brewing inside. I entered with deliberate steps, the manila folder tucked under my arm. Every eye followed me. Some with suspicion, others with unease, a few with outright hostility. The board had grown comfortable treating me as decoration, Adrian's brilliant but quiet wife. Today they would see the owner. Margaret Keene, the longest-serving board member, cleared her throat. Mrs. Cole, thank you for joining us on such short notice. We understand last night's gala ended with unexpected developments. Adrian mentioned urgent matters requiring board attention. Her voice was smooth, but her eyes betrayed fear. I placed the folder on the table and opened it like a prosecutor presenting evidence. Adrian has signed his resignation. Effective immediately. Horizon is under my sole control. Murmurs broke out like a sudden storm. David Archer, a venture capitalist who had once praised Adrian's visionary leadership, leaned forward with a forced smile. Perhaps we should slow down. Sudden leadership changes can rattle investors. We can arrange interim oversight. I slid the incorporation papers across the table. Black ink gleamed. 65% of Horizon Biotech belongs to me. 35% to Adrian. There is no interim. There is no oversight. There is only ownership. The room fell silent. Margaret lifted the documents with trembling hands, scanning the signatures, the notary stamps, the legal language Adrian had never bothered to read. This is airtight, she whispered. Completely airtight. And there is more, I said. Patent certificates, filed under my name alone, spread across the table like cards in a game they had already lost. Every algorithm. Every innovation. Every dollar of revenue comes from these. From me. The board has been applauding the wrong person for years. Faces shifted from confusion to shock, from disbelief to reluctant recognition. They realized, in that moment, how easily they had been seduced by charm while overlooking the woman who had built the machine. David tried again. Evelyn North has been instrumental in securing partnerships. We cannot. She is banned, I said, cutting him off. My voice was calm, surgical. Permanently. Neither she nor her affiliates will touch Horizon again. Gasps traveled around the table. I could almost hear their calculations, stock values, reputations, headlines. Evelyn was powerful, and tying themselves to her had felt like security. Now she was liability incarnate. Do you have the authority to enforce that? Another director asked quietly. I reached into the folder again and pulled out the signed statement. Adrian's handwriting trembled across the page, each line a confession. * Lena Cole is the founder and majority owner. She developed the core algorithms. She funded Horizon's inception. I resign from all operational duties. * I read it aloud, each syllable deliberate, each sentence a hammer blow. The boardroom froze. No one dared look away. This, I said, setting the paper in the center of the table, is the record. This is the truth. From today forward, Horizon returns to its core, innovation over theater, precision over politics. Those who cannot accept that may leave. Silence settled like ash after a fire. Finally, Margaret folded her hands. Mrs. Cole. Lena. You have our attention. What is your first directive as sole CEO? I looked out the window at the skyline my algorithms had helped shape. We stop performing for magazines and begin building for impact. The engineers will lead, not the liars. Nods spread slowly around the table, reluctant at first, then firmer. They were survivors, and they recognized where power had shifted. Horizon was no longer Adrian's stage. It was my company. My inheritance. My name. But as the meeting adjourned, I caught the flicker of unease in their eyes. They were not only reckoning with my rise, they were calculating Evelyn's response. And I knew Evelyn North would not go quietly. She would come for me. And when she did, I would be ready. The boardroom victory was only the opening salvo. True power would not be proven in signatures or meetings, it had to be lived inside Horizon's walls. And so, the morning after Adrian's resignation became official, I walked through the company's 24 floors not as a silent spouse but as the architect finally stepping into her creation. Eyes followed me as I passed through glass corridors. Engineers who once lowered their voices when I approached now stared openly, uncertain of this new order. Administrators whispered in corners, wondering if their jobs were safe. Managers clutched their tablets tighter, as if numbers might shield them from change. I offered no reassurances. Not yet. Trust would not be bought with words. It would be earned in action. On the 12th floor, I entered the development wing, the true heart of Horizon. Screens glowed with lines of code, neural networks spinning in simulation, clusters of servers humming like a living organism. Here was where my nights had dissolved into dawns, where algorithms were born. And yet for years, these halls had celebrated Adrian's leadership while hiding my authorship. I gathered the engineers in the central workspace. Their faces were a gallery of caution, hope restrained, curiosity muted by fear. Among them stood Sarah Lynn, once my assistant, now a senior engineer whose brilliance had been buried under layers of Adrian's showmanship. She had been the one texting me about anomalies during the gala. She knew. She had always known. Horizon changes today, I told them, my voice carrying across the hum of machines. No more speeches written for applause. No more budgets drained on retreats that build nothing. We are here to create. From this day forward, the engineers lead the agenda. The room remained quiet, the weight of disbelief thick. Then Sarah stepped forward, her expression lit with cautious fire. Does that mean our designs go straight to you now? Yes, I said. Direct access. No filters. No edits. A murmur rippled through the room, disbelief giving way to tentative energy. Sarah's eyes gleamed as if a weight had slid from her shoulders. Then you need to see this, she said, pulling up a model on her tablet. A breakthrough in predictive analytics, data patterns that could diagnose cardiac conditions weeks earlier than current methods. Something revolutionary, hidden away because Adrian thought it wasn't marketable enough. I studied the code. It was elegant, efficient, a reminder of why I had fallen in love with programming in the first place. This, I said softly, is Horizon's future. Hope lit their faces. For the first time, I saw trust spark like fire. They understood that the woman in front of them was not here to manage optics. I was here to build. By evening, the transformation had begun. Projects buried under dust were revived. Technical meetings stretched with genuine debate instead of staged nods. Laughter returned to the lab as minds finally had space to breathe. Horizon was alive again. But not everyone celebrated. On the executive floor, whispers curled like smoke. Evelyn North's name slid from tongue to tongue. She had called 3 directors already, furious, threatening retaliation. Her consulting group had lost millions in expected fees. Rumors said she was courting Horizon's competitors, dangling alliances to destabilize me. The board was nervous, and nervous men are dangerous. That night, I returned to the penthouse, not to rest, but to plan. Documents were spread across the dining table again, but this time, they were blueprints for the future. Partnerships built on research integrity. Contracts with hospitals to deploy Sarah's diagnostic models. Ventures that spoke of substance rather than spectacle. The city glittered beyond the glass, but I hardly saw it. My father's words echoed in my mind, build something honest, I was. Piece by piece, horizon was shifting from theater to truth. Still, as midnight settled in, my phone vibrated with a new message. Unknown number. Just 4 words, you cannot silence me. No name. But I knew the voice behind the threat. Evelyn had begun her counterattack. The first shock waves hit within days. News outlets picked up Adrian's resignation, citing personal reasons, but the real story leaked quickly through investors. Whispers became headlines, founder's wife revealed as majority owner, resignation after Gala scandal, the public narrative Adrian and Evelyn had tried to script collapsed under the weight of signed documents and frozen accounts. Adrian retreated into silence. His phone calls dwindled to unanswered voicemails, his once constant presence in glossy magazines evaporated overnight. The man who had been celebrated as a visionary was now a ghost haunting the very company he had claimed to lead. He paced the edges of his old world, knocking on doors that no longer opened. Creditors pressed. Investors ignored him. The Cartier pen he once used to sign contracts was now remembered only for signing his surrender. Evelyn, however, fought back with fire. She convened meetings with competing biotech firms, whispering poison into their ears. She painted me as reckless, an emotional widow of a marriage, not a leader of science. For a week, rumors swirled about a potential coup. Shareholders jittered, and the board wavered. Yet every attempt she made was met with hard truth, the patents. The ownership. The undeniable fact that without my algorithms, Horizon had nothing to sell. Her fury deepened when her consulting fee reversal reached the courts. She filed a suit demanding reinstatement of her contract. I countered with the documents Adrian had signed, his confession that she had orchestrated my public humiliation. Judges did not sympathize with predators caught on paper. Her case disintegrated before it began. Still, her threats echoed in late-night emails from anonymous accounts, each one promising I would regret crossing her. Meanwhile, Horizon transformed. Sarah's predictive analytics project attracted immediate attention from medical institutions. A partnership with a major hospital in San Francisco launched within weeks. Headlines shifted, Horizon's new direction promises lives saved, engineers worked with a vigor I had never seen before. Their loyalty grew with every meeting where I sat at their table, not above it, reviewing code line by line. They knew this was no longer Adrian's theater. It was their workshop. Yet not all consequences were professional. At night, when the city grew quiet, I felt the ghost of my marriage pressing against the glass walls of the penthouse. 7 years of laughter, of dreams once shared, now broken into shards. Adrian's absence was louder than his presence had ever been. He sent one letter, handwritten, the ink smudged by what I suspected were tears. I never meant to lose you, it read. I only wanted to matter. I folded it once and placed it in the safe beside the inheritance papers. Sentiment had no place in strategy, but I would not erase history. It was part of the truth I carried. Evelyn's empire began to crack next. Investors who had once fawned over her ruthless brilliance started asking the one question she had never prepared to answer: how did you miss the ownership structure? Her reputation had been built on meticulous research, on seeing what others overlooked. And now the world saw her failure, played in bright lights across headlines. One mistake, one underestimation, had cost her everything. She had not studied the numbers, and the numbers do not forgive. Still, she was not finished. Through whispers in legal corridors, I learned she was assembling a coalition, former employees, minor shareholders, even Adrian in his despair, to challenge my authority. The rumor reached me in a single chilling phrase: they want to force a vote. I stood again at the dining table that had become my war desk. Papers spread before me like battle maps. Horizon's future was thriving, but shadows gathered at its edges. Adrian had signed his surrender, yet his silence felt dangerous. Evelyn had stumbled, but she was wounded, not destroyed. And the board, though subdued, still trembled under her name. The city lights flickered against the glass as my phone buzzed with a new alert. An email from Margaret Keane, subject line stark and heavy. Extraordinary shareholders meeting, called by Evelyn North. Attendance mandatory. The counterattack had begun. The extraordinary shareholders meeting convened in the same grand hall where Evelyn once tried to destroy me. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, casting their cold light on a room filled with whispers, doubts, and sharpened glances. This time, however, I did not enter as someone's wife. I entered as the sole architect of Horizon Biotech. Evelyn was already there, draped in another crimson gown, her eyes glittering with venom. Adrian sat beside her, shrunken and pale, a shadow of the man who once basked in spotlights. She leaned toward him, whispering like a puppeteer tugging her strings. I saw his hand tremble as he adjusted his cufflinks, the ones I had given him years ago. Symbols of loyalty that had turned into chains. The room quieted when Margaret Keane struck the gavel. This extraordinary session has been called at the request of Ms. North and several minority shareholders. We are here to discuss leadership and future direction. Evelyn rose smoothly, her voice slicing through the silence. Horizon is too important to be run on whims. Under its current leadership, it risks destabilization. I move to appoint interim oversight, to safeguard the company until stability returns. Gasps rippled, cameras clicked, and for a moment it seemed her words might sway them. But then I stood, slowly, deliberately, carrying the manila folder that had become my shield and sword. Interim oversight is unnecessary, I said. Ownership is clear. 65% belongs to me. 35% to Adrian Cole. Here are the filings. Here are the patents. Here are the signatures. There is no instability, except in those who profit from chaos. I placed Adrian's signed confession on the table for all to see. His handwriting trembled across the page, acknowledging my role as founder, inventor, majority owner. His betrayal immortalized in ink. The board members leaned forward, their faces draining of color. The evidence was unassailable. Evelyn's smile flickered, then faltered. Her eyes darted to Adrian, who lowered his head in shame. You build your empire on performance, I said, my voice firm. But Horizon is built on truth. We are not here to dazzle. We are here to save lives. I gestured to Sarah Lynn, who rose with her tablet. She displayed the predictive analytics breakthrough on the projector. Charts illuminated the wall, showing data from our hospital partnership, earlier diagnoses, faster treatments, lives already changed. The room shifted. Gasps of wonder replaced whispers of doubt. Investors sat straighter, eyes wide with possibility. This is Horizon's future, I declared. Innovation that heals, not theater that distracts. Those who want profits through substance will stay. Those who crave performance may follow Ms. North into irrelevance. Silence gripped the room for a long, breathless moment. Then Margaret Keane cleared her throat. The motion for interim oversight is denied. Effective immediately, Lena Cole is recognized as sole CEO of Horizon Biotech. Applause broke out, not thunderous, but steady, real. Evelyn stood frozen, her face carved from stone. Adrian covered his eyes with his hand, as if unable to bear the weight of his downfall. And I finally breathed. Days later, Evelyn announced her resignation from her own firm. Investors withdrew, her empire collapsed, and her name became a warning in boardrooms. Always check the numbers. Adrian drifted into obscurity, teaching small classes at a community college. His repayment schedule kept him tethered to reality, each check a reminder of the life he squandered. He sent letters now and then, filled with apologies too late to matter. I filed them away, unread. 9 months after the gala, I brewed coffee in a modest townhouse in Capitol Hill. No marble floors, no chandeliers, no stage sets for strangers' approval. Just wood floors, open windows, and air that tasted of freedom. Horizon thrived under new leadership. Sarah's team grew, projects multiplied, contracts flowed. We built not for applause but for impact. Hospitals adopted our models. Patients lived longer. Every line of code carried meaning. My father's letter rested on my desk, framed at last. Asterisk build something honest. Do not let anyone erase your name, asterisk I had honored it. More than revenge, I had found resurrection. The Cartier pen still gleamed in its box, unopened. Not a gift, not a weapon, simply a reminder. That night at the gala they thought they had silenced me. Instead, I had inhaled new oxygen, filling lungs that had once only breathed for others. The best revenge was never destruction. It was living a life truer than their lies, stronger than their schemes. My name was mine again. And the world finally knew it.